there is a level where like it's good to have that little pit in your stomach that says, ooh, did I mess up here? Because that is the only way that you can circle back and say, okay, where did I mess up? How can I learn from that? If that is the track that you take when you have a worry, then that has a purpose. But if you are just in a negative spiral of worrying, that is actually going to harm you and harm your future patients. So you can worry, but only if it allows you to grow from it. Because so many times, those new grads, 30% of them, they'll leave within their first 18 months because they feel like they did not get the mentorship they were promised. And a lot of that comes down to the communication that happened at the start. And they'll say like, oh, but they promised me mentorship. Okay, but did you talk about mentorship? Like break it down like this? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well... So you didn't really talk about mentorship then.
What's the one thing that clinics call quote unquote mentorship that really isn't mentorship at all?
What's one that comes to mind for you?
I would say answering every single freaking question they ask, because I'd always tell them to go look it up, because they'd learn more if they went and looked it up somewhere and read about it and then come ask me questions about it.
In those first 6 months of practice, they always talk about like it's going to be the hardest of your first year, like getting through those first 6 months. But for me, I remember there was a point in my drive, like where I was maybe a half a mile from the practice. And at that moment, like I just got this like insane nausea. I was like, this is anticipatory anxiety, honestly, about going to work. Even though I had a fantastic network of veterinarians, there were 5 other doctors that I could go to, a whole slew of very experienced, knowledged, and credentialed technicians, veterinary assistants. Like I had, honestly, an army behind me when I went to work, and I still experienced that kind of anticipatory stress or that anxiety.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Irreplaceable Truths. I'm here with Dr. Moriah. She has a great story. I think I'm going to let her tell you about it a little bit. Upstate New York to across the pond to Scotland, and then back to Virginia. Hi Moriah, how you doing today?
I am just dandy today. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your bio, as far as where you grew up, where you did your veterinary education, and then where you are now and what you're doing.
Yeah, so let's see if I can summarize all this down. So I am East Coast born and raised, and went to teeny tiny school for undergrad. All through my life, I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian. Everything that I did, even if I diverted a path, just seemed to bring me back to it. So one thing led to another, and I was able to apply and attend veterinary school and the wonderful university of the University of Edinburgh over in Scotland. So that's where I spent my 4 years of study, but I actually jumped ahead when I did that. So between undergrad and vet school, I graduated a semester early, and I took a hop, skip, and a jump over to Kentucky and worked with the racing thoroughbreds there as like a veterinary assistant internship. It was a great way for me to learn how interesting that world is. I did love it. It was amazing, but I learned that it wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted as an individual, as a veterinarian, for the rest of my life. So I jumped from there. Again, was going through interview processes while I was in that internship, was accepted, went to Edinburgh. Now we're back on track with my story. But I spent 4 years there doing, honestly, like having the most amazing adventures. So much of my education required me to travel through the UK. So I spent many lambing seasons down in Wales, chose to go back there for 3 seasons in a row, working with like 1,700 head Cheviot ewes, these sheep that were bigger than me. Improved my rugby tackling skills, I will say, trying to catch them. But that journey came to a sad end in 2020 when I was forced to graduate. And when I came back to the States, it was the beginning of COVID, I would say, when all of this happened. And of course, at that point, I still had to find a job. I hadn't accepted anything yet. And with the travel restrictions, that made it a little bit more interesting trying to contact hospitals, quite honestly. And again, at that time, there were so many jobs available. You could have pick of the litter, quite honestly, when it came to finding a job. But the matter was trying to find the job that fit you, the job that was going to be fulfilling and consistent for the years down the road. So I was able to stay with a family member here in Virginia, and I was traveling out to different hospitals. I did a lot of virtual interviews at that point, and the one that stuck was the one that I was able to have the most like face to face contact with. So I was able to drive out to this practice, and I remember just sitting on the porch with the practice owner who had just recently sold the practice to a corporate, and we just kind of talked about like goals, expectations for me moving forward. And the thing that stuck out to me about this particular practice was how they were going to be invested in me as an individual. They didn't look at me as a just a moneymaker, as another face on the website. The questions that he was asking and the kind of the goals that we were setting up. And the main thing that hit me was when he said, no matter where you go in 2 or 3 years, because that was kind of like the window that we were like, how long do you plan on being here? Like, where do you want to go after this? And he said, no matter where you go after 2 or 3 years, I want to know that I'm sending a confident and skilled veterinarian out into the workforce. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is not just another practice. Like, they actually care about me as an individual, what I'm growing, how I'm contributing to the field, even if that means that I leave this practice. And I feel like that relationship is what really sparked off the remainder or the my current path of a focus on mentorship. Because I mean, at that time, I when I was looking for jobs, I knew about mentorship. It had been kind of talked about. It wasn't a buzzword yet, but I knew like that was I wanted to help other veterinarians create that kind of relationship, find that kind of fulfillment in their jobs. And it led me down a path where I currently am on, where I'm constantly learning about mentorship and learning about what it means, what it can look like, how it's changing within the profession. And I'm by no means an expert in it, but I am intrinsically just like, honestly, like I'm just so focused on it right now. It's so interesting to me, and I have that passion for it. So I think that's honestly where I would say my story rounds up to where I am right now, where I mean, my focus on social media is looking at mentorship. How do I highlight what mentorship is and what it can be for new grads or for recent graduates who have had good or bad experiences in their mentorship, but also how do we mentor the mentors so that we can set them up for success when they do bring a new grad into their practice. So I'll stop there because I feel like I'm bunny trailing a little bit, but
No, no, no.
that's my summary.
Well, bunny trailing, that'd be great. No, I wrote down a few questions I would definitely need to ask you. Number one, do you have any video of your rugby tackling technique?
Thankfully, no.
You
Thankfully,
don't?
no. I'm pretty
Oh my
sure.
gosh, I was losing my shit over here thinking of like how awesome would that be to show.
No, I have a couple photos where I'm getting a handoff to the face. I was not good. Let me just say this: I was not good at rugby. I'm still not good at rugby, but it was
Yeah.
fun. I loved it. It was a great way to reduce stress during vet school. You know, just going tackling people.
Well, Kidditch is a big thing over there now too, right?
What?
From Harry Potter.
Oh, Quidditch.
Yeah,
Yes,
Quidditch.
Quidditch.
Did I say Kidditch?
You
Quidditch.
said
Yeah,
Quidditch. I was like, I think
yeah,
I know what you're saying.
yeah.
It's growing. I think there's a couple like fandoms that have picked it up, but it's not near as big as rugby.
No, rugby's huge over there. So is football, as the Europeans call it. You were very lucky to be able to go do 4 years of your life in another part of the world. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm excited to talk to you today, because, obviously, my doctorate is on one of the key components is mentorship, but it's also, I'm wondering if we're kind of accepting maybe the wrong type of student here in the United States. So the first question I'm sure you get a lot is why Scotland? I know you
Why
probably get that
Scotland?
all the time.
I mean,
Right?
honestly, the answer is why not Scotland?
Well, I
quite
agree.
honestly.
I
Yeah.
agree with you completely.
Yes.
But
At
how
the
many?
end of the day, yeah, at the end of the day, the reason that I chose Scotland, I have some heritage that's back there, and I'd visited before, absolutely fell in love with the country. And there's no other way to explain it, but there was just this intrinsic pull to go back there. I couldn't explain it. I had to find a way. And when I knew there were two AVMA accredited vet schools in in Scotland, I was like, boom, there's my ticket. Edinburgh had the 4-year program after undergrad. So I applied. I applied to a couple US schools, Canadian schools. Unfortunately, was not accepted to any of them, but I got the interview for Edinburgh. So drove or flew over from Kentucky to New York City where they were holding the interview and had that. That went beautifully. And a few short weeks later, I got the acceptance. So why not?
Yeah,
Why not Scotland?
I agree. I agree. The one of my specialists that comes to my hospital and does ultrasounds, or used to, she went there as well, and she absolutely loved it. Loved it. She said it was such a learning experience because not only are you learning as a veterinarian, but you're learning about life. You're learning about how things are different in other areas of the country. It helped her, she said, be able to relate to clients a little bit differently than over here with some of her colleagues that she knows. Um, did you do a lot of medicine all 4 years, or was it more like the U.S. track where it's like 2 years of classwork and then you got to work with animals?
I think it matches more of the United States model where your first 2 years are mostly textbook. You're mostly in the lecture hall, but we honestly had a lot of animal handling courses that were through there. We also had different experiences in the different hospitals smattered throughout, but you weren't physically like in the hospital seeing patients until you hit clinical year.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of the students I meet from Ross, I've hired a few of them. I remember when I was at Illinois doing my senior year, I thought the students coming from Ross had incredible clinical experience because they are the veterinarians down in St. Kitts. So they're like, oh yeah, I did a GDV like my second week there, and I'm like, what? But I mean that unfortunately that's how you learn, but also the animals get good health care and at least reasonable priced health care too, which is a whole nother topic we can talk about if you want to today. um, Now, another question I had for you was, you said you were working with racing horses and you said, that's not my jam. What was it about working with racing horses that, was it the actual handlers of the horses, the owners of the horses, or just the concept of working with horses that just, I don't want to say gave you a sour taste in your mouth, but you just decided that's not what you want to do?
Honestly, it was a little bit of, there were two main factors. The first one was that I remember I spent more time with the veterinarian that I worked with than he did with his own family during that breeding season. And yes, there's like a certain type of person that works really, really well for. It just wasn't going to be what was ideal for me in my future. So I knew that wasn't going to work well. It was also just the toll that it takes on your body. Like it's not a kind job to have if you have like any kind of health concerns at all. Even if you have no health concerns, it can create health concerns. And quite honestly, I like my head attached to my body. So I
I,
love horses. I love working with them. It was a fantastic experience, but one too many close calls, even
yes.
when the strictest safety measures are put in place. Like it's just you, a handler in a windy barn aisle in the middle of January. Not for me. I mean, I
Yeah.
have so much respect for the veterinarians who do that work, even outside of the breeding realm, because that was mostly the line of work that I was in.
I
But
remember
it wasn't going to work for me.
I was going to go, I wanted to do equine, and thank goodness I did my rotation. I did a 9 week rotation during foaling season,
Mm.
and I knew right then and there, there's no way. This is crazy. But one time on the farm animal call, we had to collect a thoroughbred, and I mean, all they gave me was a helmet, like a hard hat. And like, okay, you should be good. And I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind. This animal is like 1,600 pounds, right? And violent. And I'm like, you
Hmm.
think this hard hat is all I need? Okay, good.
Good luck, kid.
Yeah. So I understand you on that. The one thing I had with my a lot of times though, when we because Illinois does a lot of standardbreds,
Mm.
was the insurance, right? When they realized that this horse couldn't race anymore and their insurance was worth more than it being a lawn ornament at someone's farm. Um, that really was hard on me. And that, kind of brings up the whole concept of moral injury. Did you experience any of that during your equine experience?
I don't think I directly experienced it, just because of the line of work that I was doing in particular, but I definitely heard of things or saw things in the background that you're like, wait, what's going on over there? Type of situation, just because of the nature of what racing thoroughbreds are. So I think in that sense, I was exposed to it, but because I was still just a veterinary assistant, I didn't really know exactly what was happening. I wasn't able to fully comprehend everything at the moment. So, yes, but in a different way.
Yeah, it could be hard. I could just imagine it's you're exactly correct when you say it's a special breed of veterinarian that's able to deal with horses in general.
Mhm.
And my hat's off to them. My hard hat is off to them. They can wear the hard hat, uh, because they are amazing creatures. They are gorgeous. To watch them run full gallop is just unbelievable. But they see a bee and they freak out. And if you're anywhere near that horse at that time, you could be dead or
Yeah.
injured pretty bad. So, I you know I look at working on horses the same as riding a motorcycle. Sometimes it's just
Hmm.
it's you never know what's going to happen, and it is a scary thing. Um, Now, when you came back, you said you met with a practice you just fell in love with, yet they just sold to corporate. So the person who sat you down and talked to you, was that the old owner that then became the
Yep.
medical director of the practice?
Yep. So he was the owner who became medical director, and now medical director has been handed off to another veterinarian as the practice owner is retiring. But yes, he was the one who sat me down, kind of talked through everything. Yeah, kind of set me up for where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, because you're talking about mentoring, and a lot of people don't realize that mentoring is like there's many dimensions to mentoring. It's not just someone who's going to coach you; it's someone who's going to support you emotionally, going to be there and introduce you to their network, give you a lot of feedback, which is huge. I feel sometimes when I talk to mentors, they have a hard time giving feedback to early career grads. Are you able to do that?
I would like to think that I am. I feel like you'd have to ask some of my mentees to get a flavor of like, am I truly giving the feedback that they need? Because I'm still early in my career of learning how
Right.
to do that. So I'd say it's a learning process for me.
How much fulfillment is mentoring giving you, though?
Oh my gosh, so much fulfillment. So
It
much.
is.
I feel like it's that next level because, like, you go through phases of being a GP veterinarian where you're like, okay, I got over the first hump of the first 6 months, first year. Everything is new and exciting. Maybe 2 to 3 years down the road, you start going, okay, what's next? Like, yes, everything is new and everything is exciting every single day and it's different in GP land, but there's still a level where you're looking for the next level of challenge, or the next type of fulfillment. Where can you continue to grow? And for me, that was in bringing in high school students, veterinary students, to mentor.
It was there. Okay, so what do you remember your first year out that you're like, holy cow, they never talked about this in school? Was there anything
Hmm.
specific?
I think the thing that comes to mind, and there's probably going to be multiple things that filter through my mind, but the main one was in those first 6 months of practice. They always talk about like it's going to be the hardest of your first year, like getting through those first 6 months. But for me, I remember there was a point in my drive, like where I was maybe a half a mile from the practice, and at that moment, like I just got this like insane nausea. I was like, this is anticipatory anxiety, honestly, about going to work. Even though I had a fantastic network of veterinarians, there were 5 other doctors that I could go to, a whole slew of very experienced, knowledged, and credentialed technicians, veterinary assistants. Like I had honestly an army behind me when I went to work, and I still experienced that kind of anticipatory stress or that anxiety. And that's something that it's kind of talked about in vet school. And honestly, it may be the thing that no matter how much you talk about it, you still can never prepare someone fully for it. But that's the thing that comes to mind when we ask that question.
What was it that was giving you the anxiety? A procedure you're about to do, or having to deal with clients, or going to work?
I think it was just the feeling of, am I cut out for this? Like, am I prepared for this? Because I mean, you never want to, like, you're not fully confident at that point in your career. Like, there's still so much for you to learn. It's so easy to make a mistake. And having the confidence in yourself to step up to the plate and make a call on a case that, I mean, you could get it completely wrong. And how you deal with the after effects of, like, maybe you did get that wrong, maybe you did make the wrong choice. That's something that it comes with time, it comes with experience, and even this many years down the road, like, you still will have those cases where you're like, how did I miss that? How did I make that mistake? And how do you recover from that? um, it's a little bit easier to do that now than if that same thing had happened maybe 5.5 years ago when I first started.
How do you deal with your mentees now when they come to you? Because it sounded like there you had a little bit of imposter syndrome, and you also had a little bit of what we call cognitive perseverance or perseveration, which is basically you go home, you ruminate, you worry, and then you wake up the next morning and you're still worrying that you're going to do it again. Do you have any tricks that you can tell people to realize that, hey, you really are a veterinarian, you are trained, you know what you're doing, and it is practice, not perfection?
Hmm. So yeah, tips and tricks on how to deal with that. So much of it does come from just experience and kind of getting the number of cases, like them. Let me go back. I would say the more time that you are practicing, the greater the likelihood that you're going to make an error. And so you just kind of have to accept that fact. And knowing that every single veterinarian has experienced this on some level does take some of the stress away, because a lot of it is that worry that I'm the only one who's feeling like this. Like, I'm the only one who's going to go through this process. And when you realize, like, hey, you're not that special for, for messing up, it does take some of the stress away, I would say. But also, trying to break that cycle is super important, because one of the major things that I see, and you probably see with new grads, is again, they go home and they ruminate, or they can't seem to leave work at work. And one of the most important things is making sure that you have that security system, that security net of people around you that you can go to, and rather than ruminating in your own head, you can say, like, hey, I need to talk at you. I don't necessarily need you to fix anything, but I need to talk it out. And having that safety net that you can do that with is empirically important, I would say, in learning how to handle these situations, but also grow in your confidence, grow in your network of, again, of people that you have around you. But yeah, that would be the main tip that I would say, is make sure that when you are starting practice, even if they're not physically there, make sure you have people that you can go to that are a safe space, so that you can talk at them, you can go work through a case with them, even if they have no medical experience, because that will set you up for success and prevent you from going through a negative spiral.
So how would you respond to someone who said, if you don't worry, you don't care? Because I think that's one of the biggest myths out there.
Mm.
If you don't go home and worry about, oh my God, is that spay going to bleed out? Oh my gosh, did I get all that root out of that mouth? Oh my gosh, did I give the wrong dose of medication? If you don't go home and do that, people say you don't care enough. Do you believe that's true?
I think there is a level where, like, it's good to have that little pit in your stomach that says, ooh, did I mess up here? Because that is the only way that you can circle back and say, okay, where did I mess up? How can I learn from that? If that is the track that you take when you have a worry, then that has a purpose. But if you are just in a negative spiral of worrying, that is actually going to harm you and harm your future patients. So you can worry, but only if it allows you to grow from it. If you're worrying just for the sake of worrying and having the badge that I worried, that's going to harm you. That's going to harm your patients.
Do you ever discuss with your mentees the biggest mistake you made and how you learned from it?
Yeah.
You want it?
Yeah.
What was that mistake? I could tell you what mine was. What was your mistake?
One of my mistakes, one of them, was honestly missing a heart murmur on a dog. It didn't obviously result in the death of, like, I've never had one that like resulted in the death of a patient kind of level, but I had one that resulted in the loss of a client from our practice because I missed this. And it still kind of haunts me to this day. But as a result, I'm able to, one, share that, hey, I messed up. Two, I'm still practicing and I still love what I do, regardless of that. And three, I'm able to take that experience and kind of highlight the importance of different aspects of the exam, or also just communication with a client. Because it was a situation where I don't really have the main answer as to why it happened in this situation, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how did I communicate with the client afterwards? How did we leave things at the end of the day so that it didn't spiral out of control?
So to continue the education part, I guess the question would be, it mustn't have been that bad of a murmur if you missed it. I mean,
I mean, the dog was gonna die regardless of if I found it that month or the month before. But it
okay.
was the client's response to the situation.
Yeah.
And that is one of those things that as a new grad, you have so much of your personal value placed in what clients think of you. And as you get older, you or go through practice, you put less and less weight into that. But as a new grad, it's a very heavy, a very leading point for them. Um, so yeah, the major thing that I learned from that error was the communication with the clients.
So looking at your education at Edinburgh, and now you're working with these new mentees, do you think Edinburgh prepared you better how to talk to clients?
Hmm. I think they laid a lot of groundwork with the time that they had available. This is one of the bigger conversations that I have with people is like, how can vet schools do better to prepare new grads for the communication, for the non-clinical skills? And I wish that there was a way to implement it better in their first and second years in a way that they actually see the purpose of it, because we can talk at them and we can talk about communication skills and those first 2 years, but they're like, I just want to know how the heart works. Like that's what they're most focused on. So at my university, we actually had we did have the setup where they'd bring in actors and then kind of go through that situation. And honestly, for me, it did highlight aspects of my communication that directly impacted how I went into clinics. So there definitely was benefit for that. I know it made a lot of people really nervous to be on camera or to be in front of their peers, but those are little baby stepping stones that you need to overcome in order to be able to talk to clients, honestly, in a consult room. So I would say with the time and the scenarios that they had available, they did prepare us quite well for these situations. Is there more that I wish we could do? Absolutely. Do I have ideas? You know it. But for
Yeah.
the answering your question, then yes.
Well, personally, I've been preaching this. I'm like, do we truly need a full semester of virology? Truly. Like, let's talk about that one class, right? We took an entire semester on virology. How much do you need to know about DNA, mRNA? I mean, for those who want to go into research, maybe. But as a veterinarian, you don't really use all that knowledge they teach you in virology, for example. So why don't we cut that class in half and then have a half for like how to talk to clients, you know, or you have more of the soft skills type lectures. um I don't know how open the the vet schools are to being disrupted like that, because you know as well as I do, we've been doing it like this for years, for decades, you know, and it seems to be working, but it really isn't. I don't think it is. I think the
Hmm.
attrition rate is in our profession is horrendous, and it's so sad because this profession is so amazing. Um, so I mean that's my two bits on that. Oh, and my mistake I made. I was doing a PU, and this cat was blocked, and I'm just slowly using my finger to dissect around, and out of nowhere the penis hit the floor. It literally just fell off. And it's a teaching moment because what I told everyone, because like when I told, they're like, holy shit, what did you do? And I'm like, I had my technician call one of the referral surgeons. I get put the phone in my ear and say, walk me through how to do this. And
Hmm.
but it's a teaching moment, because you could have panicked, freaked out, didn't know what to do, or you try to take care of the situation, you know? And that's one of my, that's one of the ones I'll never forget. And that's, to this day, it's still a saying that all my technicians use, that it's all fun and games until the penis hits the floor.
Oh my goodness. And I think like as you're sharing that story, the thing that comes to mind is how you set the stage for what a culture of mentorship looks like. Because like in that moment you were like, yes, you stayed calm, cool, and collected as you can, or at least you're telling the story that you did. um
Oh, I was a
but
duck. I was a duck. You know, my legs were just spinning under the
yeah.
water, but I looked nice and smooth.
But you were setting the stage and kind of like teaching everybody around you like how like what the standard or the expectations are going to look like of what the culture and that practice is going to look like of how do we handle these situations. So that's like one little aspect or one little facet of the a mentorship as a culture that I think
Yeah.
about when you said that.
Yeah. The culture. Yeah. That's a whole, the culture of the practice is really brought on by the leadership. And usually the leadership should be the mentors. And what I tell people is, if you don't have good leadership, good mentorship, or you don't feel psychological safety, you should get out of there and try to find something that will, because the profession will not be kind to you, because you won't be learning the way you should be learning. Veterinary
Hmm.
medicine isn't not learn on the fly. And unfortunately, I believe a lot of these groups that own practices now believe it should be, which is you should just be a money generating machine. And the fact that your medical director sat down and said, this is what we're doing with you, and this is what we expect of you, and this is what you should expect of me, is the way it should be. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, a lot of people are getting it wrong. Do you go across the country lecturing on mentorship?
I don't really have the ability to travel with where I'm doing with my job currently, but I have a couple travel talking. What am I trying to say? I have a couple set up over the next year, like one or two traveling to talk type of situations, but for the most part, I do more virtual.
Oh, a lot of virtual. Well, you're a COVID student, so that makes sense.
Well, interestingly enough, like all of my schooling was in person. It was
Hmm.
just the last like 3 weeks that they tried to do the virtual stuff when they were trying to figure it all out. So thankfully, pretty much my entire schooling was real and the typical vet student. My first year in practice, whole different ball game compared to anybody else that's ever gone through practice. That was interesting. Trying to
Curbside? Curbside?
What's that?
Were you curbside?
Yeah, we were curbside for almost an entire year,
But I think
but
that worked to your benefit, because then you could
it
get
did.
more time for people to sit back there and talk you through cases.
Hmm. Yeah, it honestly set me up for success in ways that no one could have expected because I got a lot of experience, one, talking with clients on the phone, whole new skill set that vet school does not teach you how to do. They're really good about teaching you how to talk to people in person, but trying to talk to them on the phone and read their voice as their body language, whole different ball game. So I learned that on the go. But at the same token, I was able to get a patient in and do their exam, literally open the door and be like, hey, Dr. So and so, can you come take a look at this pet with me? There's no clients in the room. We can sit down, talk about everything. I can go through my plan with them, and then I can jump on the phone and be like, hey, so this is the plan, without having to do this back and forth all the time, or kind of faff around trying to figure out what to do with a client in the room. So I would say that being curbside for that first year as a new grad made things a breeze. It was so easy.
Did you feel at any point that your career or job were in jeopardy as a first year being mentored?
No.
That's another big one, right? That really is. You know, God bless whoever mentored you because they did a great job. And the fact that you're mentoring again means that you did well. Is
Mm-hmm.
and
Like
and
I have to owe it all to my mentor. And like when I talk to new grads or vet students about what to look for in mentorship, a lot of it is mirrored off of what I personally experienced, but I also know that that doesn't work like perfectly for everybody. But in general, like I'm always talking to them about in your conversations, like talk about what are those first 3 months in practice and what are they going to look like? What kind of consults are you going to see? What kind of access are you going to have to your mentor for those consults? Are you going to be left alone at any point in time during those first 3 to 6 months? But also on the surgical side, like do you want them scrubbed into surgery with you? Do you want them just doing their own surgeries? Are they seeing consults? Are they available via phone? Or are they going to faff off for 2 weeks golfing the moment that you start? So it's so much of it is just sitting down and go almost like going through a checklist of questions and being like, okay, well, how are we going to answer this question together so that we set the expectations for you as the mentor, but also me as the mentee, so that nothing gets lost in translation. Because so many times, and again, I'm probably just preaching to the choir with you about this, but so much of it is like those new grads, like 30% of them, they'll leave within their first 18 months because they feel like they did not get the mentorship they were promised. And a lot of that comes down to the communication that happened at the start. They'll say, like, oh, but they promised me mentorship. Okay, but did you talk about mentorship? Like, break it down like this. And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, so you didn't really talk about mentorship then.
what's the one thing that clinics call quote unquote mentorship that really isn't mentorship at all?
Hmm. Have to come back to me on that one. What's one that comes to mind for you?
Um, I would say answering every single freaking question they ask. Because I'd always tell them to go look it up because they'd learn more if they went and looked it up somewhere and read about it and then come
Mm-hmm.
ask me questions about it. My mentees, like I put 20 previous employees into vet school and they're all veterinarians and thriving and loving it. And a lot of them have become mentors because of what I've done. But the biggest thing is that I think a lot of mentors are too quick to jump in to help, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I would be there for that, like the first cystotomy. I would be in the surgical room, but I would not be gowned up. But I would be walking them through it because if I gowned up and the slightest thing went wrong, they would tell me to probably take over the surgery. And I'm not trying to create. I don't want them to panic like that. So I always felt like for me when it came to surgery, just being in the room, I had a gown and gloves ready to go if they needed me. I could be in there in what 20 seconds. But I think the biggest thing for me is being too much of a I don't want to say too much of a coddler, but you got to teach them as well as a mentor. If I'm not here, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of mentees and mentors expect. Like
Mm-hmm.
you went through vet school. You have a $350,000 tab to prove it. You graduated. Obviously the professors and everyone at the vet school thought you were good enough to carry that degree. You got to believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing. But if someone's going to be really just grabbing your hand and holding your hand like that the whole time, it's really not going to give
Mm-hmm.
them the it's not going to help them build their professional identity. It's not going to help them believe that they can do stuff. But that's for me. That's my own personal bit. I'm pretty sure everyone has a different answer. Some people probably tell me I'm full of crap. That's fine. But I believe that's the biggest issue. But my mentees knew I would always be there if they needed anything
Mm-hmm.
via whether I was in the clinic, even if I was on the phone or in a room with someone, if someone came and grabbed me, I was in, right? I was there.
Yeah.
And even if I wasn't there, they could call me. I would always answer the phone for them.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Maybe do you see it differently? Because I know there's a generational gap between us.
I honestly, I agree with you. But a lot of that comes down to the mentor as well. If that's what they think they're supposed to do. But also on the one hand, not so much that they think that that's what they're supposed to do, but also they want to fix things. They want to help. I think a lot of times, and especially as us if you're the mentor, you're like, oh, this is the case. Like, I don't want them to mess up and then something go really wrong with the case. So it's a fine dance learning as a mentor. How much of a leash can I give my mentee? How much of a mistake can I let them make that doesn't negatively impact the patient? So it's a dance that you have to make. So that way they feel the stress of the situation, but they have the tools and the resources to figure it out with you, even if it's just your presence being there. Like I know for myself, there were a number of times where I was struggling to break down the suspensory ligament in some of these really, really big dogs. I'm not a big person. It takes my whole body sometimes to get in there. And there were times where I was like getting really frustrated, and I would to ask my nurse, I'm like, just go get Dr. So-and-so, like just make him walk in the room. And he'd literally come out of from his consult, his little hands are folded, and he walks into the room and he's like, what can I do for you? And I'd be like, bloop, we're good. Okay, bye. So much of it was just learning for myself, like, what do I need from my mentor? Just like the presence gave me the confidence. I don't know. But also for myself as a mentor now, learning, okay, how many times can I, like if a mentee intubates the esophagus, like, am I going to let them replace it once, try and figure it out again, or am I going to have my nurse jump in type of situation? It's just learning in that situation for that patient, how many times can I let them do this before, okay, someone else needs to step in. And that is a skill that it takes time to learn as a mentor as well. So as much as I want to say that the mistake is coddling too much, I think there's still just a lot of learning that has to happen. And that's where I'm trying to open up like conversations with people about like, how do we provide mentorship to the mentors? We talk about the mentees and setting them up for success, but if the mentors aren't confident in how to mentor, then the relationship falls apart as well.
Well, if you're a mentor as well, you always have to have your ear open. Even if you're writing up
Mm-hmm.
a chart or doing something somewhere, you always got to be listening. I would always make sure I was conscious of a new grad or someone in the office. And out of nowhere, sometimes I would go, hey, why did you choose that treatment? That's kind of interesting. Not like to make them feel bad, but
Yeah.
just to have them explain their thought process as well. Because that's another way to have a crucial conversation, especially if you know this dog's on Rimadyl and they want to give a shot of cortisone, and instead of saying, no, you can't do that, you're going to kill the, I always be like, are you sure you want to do that? Is the dog on any other medications? Like, are the owners aware of prednisone? Like, and then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden they would go look at the chart and be like, oh shit, thank you.
Because you're teaching those patterns of what they need to do. So honestly, I think that's really good.
Yeah. And also, no two mentors are the same. Definitely no two mentees are the same. So you can't do a one size fits all program either. That might be another mistake. I think it's at the larger groups. I think that's the biggest mistake is that they're mentoring
That would
everybody
be
the
mine.
same way.
Yeah.
And you can't do that. You can't do that. Not everyone learns the same way. Some are visual. Some are, need to read. I was a visual learner, so I was always see one, do one, teach one type thing. But everyone's different. What breed of dog has the worst suspensory ligament in your opinion?
Oh, I wouldn't say breed of dog. I would just say age of dog would be the bigger thing. Those really large breeds that are coming in at like, I would say 18 to 24 months of age. They've had like one, maybe two heat cycles.
Or they're in a heat cycle?
Or they're in a heat cycle. Granted, if they're in a heat cycle, I find it breaks down a little bit easier. But when they're outside of that heat cycle, I like all 120 pounds of me are like on the table trying to break this down.
It's not like strumming a guitar, which everyone says.
I
It
know. They're like, "Oh, you're just gonna pluck it," and I'm like,
Now,
"Seriously?"
Rhodesian Ridgebacks, those
They
are
are
the
tough.
worst
Yes.
because they're skinny, they don't have any body fat, and it's like everything, like their muscles in their body is just as tight. All those sight hounds,
Mhm.
like, because everything is so defined. It's like, Jesus, was the suspensory ligament working out while you're running 40 miles? I mean, it's so hard to break down.
It
I
feels
think
like it.
I've had two where I actually had to go in there and blunt dissect it with a
Oh.
hemostat.
Ugh. Those are the
Yeah.
ones where you're hoping that you're also doing a pexy so you can just zip them
Oh, zip
open
open.
and
Yeah.
just get everything
But
open.
remember, incisions heal side to side, not end to end.
Exactly. When
Right?
in doubt, just make your incision bigger.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yep.
was about to say when in doubt, cut it out. No, but then not in this case.
Not in this situation.
You have so if if one of your mentees make up, I don't want to say a horrendous mistake, but just make a mistake. How do you approach that with them?
So it depends on, do they know they made the mistake, or what's the situation?
Well, I mean, let's just say they gave the wrong dose of antibiotic. It's
Okay.
not life threatening, but they made a mistake,
Hmm.
and you caught that, or you what is your approach to making sure you rectify the situation and also know that they still can feel confident and comfortable knowing that you're not going to hold it against them?
Hmm. I think in these situations, like say they knew they made the mistake and they caught themselves. I would hope that I've set the groundwork so that if that happens, they can come to me and be like, "Oh my gosh, hey, I just did this. What do I do?" Um, and in those situations, like boom, they've already identified they made the mistake. They've already come to me. We have the opportunity to rectify it. But the bigger thing is sitting down and saying, okay, this happened. One, what does it mean for the patient? Let's talk through that, talk through how we're going to handle this. But two, what can we do in the future to try and limit this type of error from occurring in the future? Because we can't say like we can turn it to zero, like we're human, but what can we do to dramatically decrease the risk of this happening in the future? And just letting them lead the conversation is the bigger part, because again, that's how they're going to build those neural pathways. That's how they're going to build those patterns of behavior, so that way they prevent this from happening in the future. Which, quite honestly, I would say 9 out of 10 mentees, if they make an error like that, they're going to be so like nitty about every single dose that they do for the next 3 months. You don't have to worry about it, if they're anything like me. And granted, if you have the situation where maybe they didn't know they gave the wrong dose, like, and I know we've had many situations where, say you take over a case for another doctor and you find out, oh my gosh, they did this incorrectly. It says a lot about you, about how you approach them, and whether they're a mentee or not, and how you handle these situations, because you don't want to throw them under the bus. You want to keep that relationship, because you have to work with them every single day. But opening the conversation again, kind of again letting them lead it more than anything, but saying, hey, I want to kind of go over the case that you saw recently, and again setting the groundwork that you're going to have case reviews opens the door for this already, because then they're not thinking, oh my gosh, something is wrong, I'm a bad doctor. They're thinking, okay, we have a case review, like that's where we're starting. But you can talk through about like, okay, talk me through your clinical decisions, for what you did here, more or less, just so I can hear how you're thinking through cases. Like that's the main thing that I worry about outside of this individual case is, okay, what is your thought process? How are you getting from step one to step two to step three, so that we can modify or streamline processes down the road? And a lot of times by doing that, they'll catch their own mistake rather than me pointing it
Mm.
out to them, allowing them to figure it out themselves. And then you're kind of back to that first part that we talked about, where they're like, I made the mistake.
Right.
And when they figure it out on their own, they're more likely to take ownership of it. They're more likely
And
to
learn.
learn from it, and reduce the likelihood of errors in the future.
So that goes back to what I said about the biggest mistake is that we could coddle our mentees a little too much.
Mm-hmm.
Is there in these new grads you're seeing, is there a new panic movement, or like, is there something you're seeing specifically with the new grads that are coming to you that is something new compared to some of the other things or what you experienced? Or is it the same old broken record? The same things cause the same issues?
I would say that new grads are increasingly like terrified of being sued. Like that, the ones that I'm seeing, they are so worried about something coming back to them or being misconstrued. And so their medical records, at least the ones that I've seen, they're like really, really nitty gritty about what they're writing and how they're talking with clients. Um, and yes, I feel like the landscape of veterinary medicine has changed in a way that clients are a little bit more eager to reach for that as an option. But I physically am not seeing that happen, at least in our practice. But I think that the grads that I've talked to, I'm seeing that as a change from when I graduated, even.
Okay. Is there a belief that you believe that new vets need to get rid of right now if they
Oh,
want to
a
enjoy
belief
this
that they
profession?
hmm. uh, that they're going to do everything perfect, or that they're going to be able to offer and do gold standard for every single case. Spectrum of care, thankfully, is much more of a conversation nowadays, and for good reasons. Again, the landscape of veterinary medicine has changed. The landscape of our clients have changed. And when we graduate, we think that we're going to be able to do gold standard every single time. And then it breaks us, or when we can't, or that we're going to know the answer to every single thing. This is one of the issues with, well, that one of my mentees have. He's like, I want to know what's wrong every single time. And I'm like, you're not going to. 50% of the time, at least, even less than that. All you can do is make the best decision that you can with the information that you have available. And I find that that's maybe not just a new grad thing, that's a veterinarian in general issue. But for new grads coming out of school, that would be the major thing, I would say.
And you also mentioned that you do case reviews. Do you actually block time for you and your mentee to go over cases?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's one of those things, again, in the start, like when you're doing your interview process or setting up your contract and putting a mentorship agreement in attachment to that. One of the things that should be laid out is, okay, in those first 3 months, that's like the first block of time. How often are we going to meet? What are we going to talk about? How much time are we going to block for this? And that way, you as the doctor, as the mentor, you're not scheduled for consults during that time. Like that is a dedicated time with you and your mentee, even if it's just 30 minutes once every other week or something like that. But that the expectation is then set, so that 3 weeks down the road, if it hasn't happened, your mentee can be like, hey, remember this piece of paper that we signed? We said we were going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get it in writing for sure. 100%. Do you know how many veterinarians I know that think the handshake is binding? It's like this isn't the Wild Wild West anymore. Things have changed. Get everything in writing. Make it very clear. It also helps make a roadmap for both the mentor and mentee going forward. So you know what's required of both of you. You know, it's like when you go get a job, you want a job description. Like, what am I responsible for? Same concept with a mentor agreement. And I love the fact that you know people like yourself and others that are doing the mentoring stuff now, they're actually preaching get it in writing, get a contract. I love that.
Mhm.
Is there a copy of said contract that someone can use as an example that you know of?
I think AHA has a rough draft that you can use. Otherwise, I will say a lot of the corporates, they are now creating their own mentorship agreement, and it's very, very loose language, but at least the one for my own. But it's a starting point for a lot of people, and that's what they need. And I think for a lot of new grads, one thing that I really want to work on, is an actual list of like, here's a list of questions that you can walk into your interview with, or not necessarily walk in with them just completely empty, but
Okay.
walk into them answered for you. Like, what are your expectations going into this? So that way you can, when you sit down and you say, hey, I would like to include a mentorship agreement, Let's talk about these things. And then they can hear where their mentor is coming from. They can find a middle ground potentially between those two ideas, because a lot of new grads, like, they don't even know what to ask when it comes to mentorship. And so we're not doing them any favors by saying, oh, talk about mentorship, without giving them any like groundwork to use.
What's more important, a mentorship agreement or a signing bonus?
Mentorship agreement. It's not even a question.
1000%. Yeah, 1000%. Trust me, if you get good mentoring, the money will come. The money will come because you will be a great veterinarian who loves what they do. And I can't preach that enough, because everyone's like, oh my goodness, the signing bonus is great. Yeah, but you're going to be a medical director 3 days out of vet school with no other doctors there. I mean, what are you expecting? So I couldn't agree with you more on that. I couldn't agree at all. If you were going to put a billboard outside of every vet school, what message would you put on it?
Oh gosh, I hate these questions. I'm not good with off the cuff.
Yeah, you are. You live this life every day.
Not in these exact words, but I would want them to know that vet school is what's going to set them up to survive. Everything that you learn in vet school is what's going to help you to survive. It's everything you do after vet school that's going to turn you into an incredible veterinarian. So that's like one of those mindsets that I try and help them understand. Is even like we have a fourth year student with us right now. And I was like, you're in vet school. You've learned information that is a mile wide and relatively an inch deep. You're going to now go into practice. You're going to focus down on information that's an inch wide and a mile deep. And that is a change in the mindset. So that way, when they come to practice and they're like, they're a breath of fresh air, honestly, having new grad or fourth year students. There's so many questions that I'm like, I don't know the answer. Vet student, go. Because I know these nitty gritty things. I know a lot of wide information. But when you
And the
get
new
into practice,
technology too, and all the new
yeah,
techniques and technology.
I know all these new things. They know so much. It's so wide, their breadth of knowledge. But the clinical application, deepening that information, that is what happens when you actually launch into practice. And changing that mindset, I feel like, takes away a lot of the scaries that happen when you get into practice about not knowing things. It's like, you know where to find the information. Now go and relearn it again and then come back. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I knew all the stuff like. There was so much I dumped over the last 30 years. There is, because there's a lot of stuff you learn that you just never use. And I made a promise to all my associates. I'm like, if I ever diagnose leishmania, I retire on the spot. Because our instructor for leishmania was from Colombia, didn't speak English, and all her slides were in Spanish. And I'm like, all I remember is tsetse fly. That's all I remember. That's all I could tell you about the disease process. But if I ever had diagnosed it, I was done. And then now you talk to people like Dr. Christopher Lee, who's like, oh, global warming, leishmania is coming. I'm like, well, I've already
Like, gosh,
kind of
dang
walked
it.
away. What good does that do me? Could we warm this globe up harder, quicker? That would have been great. So just for my guests, if they didn't know, you used to have a podcast,
Yes.
right? What
Yeah.
gap were you trying to fill with that?
Yes. So the gap that I was trying to fill with the podcast, a lot of it, let's see, the different iterations of the podcast. That's the first place to go. The first couple years, I would say it was really just trying to connect with the veterinary profession. Like, I was just asking anybody who was willing to hear me, like, tell me your story. Like, that was what I was doing. I was just trying to learn about the profession, take people, like, I was talking with veterinarians who do the Mongol Derby, and bringing them onto my podcast just to learn about what they do, how they get there, what this, like, they brought students out to do this kind of thing. So it was like opening those opportunities. And so the second iteration of the podcast was looking at kind of like my final year in vet school and just that journey, and then transitioning into real life practice. And then the third iteration, or the most recent iteration, was looking specifically at mentorship stories. So I was learning, like, what was like, say yourself, like, how did you get into what you're doing? What was your first couple years in practice like? Just opening up that experience of saying, okay, what were the similarities in these situations that went poorly, that went well? What are things that we can learn from those experiences? And so the gap that I was trying to fill, I would say, over the course of this, was just letting people know that their experience isn't necessarily isolated. There are so many others that have had the good and the bad and everything in between. We've all experienced it together, and creating that community, letting people know that they're not alone, and providing more opportunities, because I would say the network that I was able to explore and expand upon just by doing the podcast has been incredible. I think about like all the people that I wouldn't know today if I hadn't done the podcast and hadn't been brave enough to just say, hey, I'm a vet student, I have a podcast, will you be a guest on it? Just by doing that, I know so many incredible mentors, I know so many incredible veterinarians, and it's been an experience that I would never trade for anything else.
How many of these conversations that you had over those iterations changed the way you practiced?
Every single conversation I've had has influenced how I practice in some way, whether that was kind of confirming the things that I was doing and saying, okay, this is working for other people as well, or modifying the way that I practice and mentor, just because I'm learning from all these different experiences. And kind of like we talked about in the very beginning, like one of the benefits of going to Edinburgh and practicing, well, not practicing, but learning outside of the United States, was being around people of different thought processes. Like they had different life experiences. They're coming to the single place, unified under veterinary medicine. But again, like I'm learning so much from just being around them, from hearing the different accents and learning what their lives are like. It all benefits us to have this diversity within our profession, whether that is in how you practice medicine or how you practice mentorship. But as a result, we grow and we flourish, just by doing that.
Yeah, and it also shows you the benefit of communication. Being open
Mm-hmm.
and willing to talk to people, you learn so much. And that is important with if you're talking to other veterinarians or if you're talking with your clients. You learn
Mm-hmm.
so much and create such genuine, authentic relations that it can change everything that you do. Um, is there anything that really excites you right now in veterinary medicine? Like if I said, what's the one thing that's coming around that's really exciting you about vet med, what would you say?
I would say, honestly, doing urgent care and emergent care has been really exciting for me recently. It's just a different flavor of what I do. Because in GP, like you do a certain level of this every single day, but that has been an area where, like when I'm doing my CE, I want to focus in on that just to learn better, to get better. Ultrasound skills are all fall into that. So that would be the overarching area that I'm growing in my interest in.
Are you using any AI tools right now?
Yes, yes. So that
What
is
what what are
the
your
second
favorite?
side of it.
Yeah, what's your
Um,
favorite?
well, what is the name of the program that we're using right now? Well, right now we actually have, our AI was a beta test for our PIMS. So through Vetspire. And so right now it is, I love it. It has made my life so easy because I can literally walk into the room, hit a single button. The whole thing is recorded from my physical exam to the conversation I have with a client. Discharge instructions are auto populated. And then I can walk back out. I can hit transcribe. I can hit review notes. I can still change things as I want. And within 10 minutes, I have taken a 40-minute consult, boiled it down, and I can submit those discharges to the client. So I'm no longer having to spend hours and hours and hours afterwards, after my shift, going over notes, or trying to remember, did I hear a murmur on that dog? It's already put in my notes.
Yeah, I'm doing relief work now, and of course, all these different PIMs at all these different hospitals are so different. But I love just I record everything that goes on in the exam room on a Applaud device that's made by
Mm-hmm.
Chat, and it just downloads. It transcribes
Yeah.
and downloads. So then writing records are the bane of every veterinary experience because it is a true binding legal record. And
Yeah.
the other thing I just did, which was this weekend, I have never done this because I'm confident in my ability to look at radiographs, but I took some radiographs and I took pictures of all the radiographs and I uploaded them into Chat, Gemini, and Grok, and they all three gave me the same answer, which was pretty cool. Which was,
Hmm.
you got to get the dog the heck out of there. It needs an ultrasound right now. And I also have to agree with you on the urgent care because I love not knowing what's coming in next. I
Hmm.
love that. I love that. If you want to hone your skills, then I mean that is the way to go. Because general practice basically is the 3 Ds: diarrhea, derm, and dental. Those that's general practice. Maybe you have an L, which is a limp, but you got to learn those 3 Ds if you're going to do general practice. And you're going to rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. Where urgent care, you have no idea what's coming. It could be anything.
Hmm.
And it can be coming from any practice as well because you're urgent. So it's awesome. You have a chance to meet new clients. You have a chance to, just stay on your toes. And if you feel like you're getting into a lull, try urgent care because it will just do a relief shift. It'll be awesome. It will show you that you know what you're doing and you can think on your
Hmm.
toes. So I couldn't agree with you more on that. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, Dr. Moriah, what's the best way?
Best way, honestly, is through Instagram. I'm dr.moriah.mccauley, and I'm pretty good about responding to messages, even if they get dumped into, what's the other category? Whatever. So
Messenger.
yeah, just send me a message, send me a DM there, respond to stories. That is going to be the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here today. It was awesome. It was really
Well,
good.
thanks for having me. I love the conversation, and
Yeah.
I'm always open, always down to talk about mentorship.
Hey, mentorship any day of the week. Let's do it. I love mentorship because I love teaching young professionals how to become great. I mean, and that's obviously what you've learned is that it's very fulfilling to watch someone become confident in themselves and be able to practice at a high level. And it's just there's nothing like it. And I wish more veterinarians would jump on that bandwagon because I think a lot of the issues we have could probably be avoided. And I don't think opening up how many more vet schools they want to open up is going to be the issue. I think we need to keep those that we have in practice,
Mm-hmm.
and then we should be better. And let's get back the ones that left. But that's a whole different. We could talk about that next time.
Next time, yeah, we don't have enough time today.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Irreplaceable Truths. We'll talk to you soon.